Hello and welcome to the year-end special edition of 2x2. I'm Rohin Dharmakumar, one of your hosts. Together with Praveen Krishnan, PGK, my co-host, we've released 22 episodes of 2x2 since our inaugural edition in July. We've covered an incredible breadth of counterintuitive topics framed as, 2x2s. Would Flipkart become Phonepay before Phonepay became Flipkart? Did Delhi prick Bengaluru's bubble? Is the golden era of the software engineer over? Why is health insurance broken? How will Ola and Uber avoid death by 1,000 cuts? Why is Zepto behaving like a gold medalist? Can venture capitalists do no wrong? Dmart versus the challengers at the gates, AI and the impending disruption of Indian SaaS. We've had incredible fun exploring these ideas with a bunch of really sharp, experienced, and opinionated guests. Finding guests who don't hesitate to speak their mind and state unpopular truths has been one of the hardest things, far, far tougher than finding interesting topics. We owe all our guests a huge thanks for trusting us. Far too many professionals and leaders prefer to stick to rehearsed and predictable talking points in public these days. We'd started 2x2 with the ambition to operate at the intersection of curiosity and synthesis. Each week, we said we'd spot the hidden connections and unasked questions. We'd identify the cast of players and their motivations. We'd bring in incredible people to discuss these with. We try to answer simple yet fundamental questions like, what is going on? Why is it happening? Who gains and who loses? And where is all of this leading to? By always asking questions, always connecting the dots, always being unfiltered and uninhibited. We wanted 2x2 to be your personal investigative brain. In 2025, we hope to make 2x2 even more interesting and unpredictable. Yes, at its core, it will still be a weekly podcast. But I'm excited at the possibility of doing so much more by involving our subscribers, listeners, and readers in these endeavors. We want to make 2x2 our collective investigative brain. Thanks for subscribing, reading, and listening to us. Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And if you haven't rated us yet on your favorite podcast platform, it would mean a lot to us if you could. Let's kick off with episode 1. Will Flipkart become Phonepay before Phonepay becomes Flipkart? What does it take for any company, Flipkart or anyone else, to win over a Phonepay user?
I don't think you should win over a PhonePe user.
I mean, they have almost half of the market, right?
So be it. They're doing their work. I mean, PhonePays and Flipkarts are not competing with each other. What can Flipkart do? What does Flipkart not do today? Flipkart does not do hyperlocal well. The way forward for Flipkart is to increase penetration on hyperlocal. Get more and more sellers on board. Get more and more sellers on board at good terms.
Is it too late to do that given Zepto, Blinkit and Swiggy, Instamart?
They're all about delivery only. Who is solving for inventory visibility?
What does that mean, Professor?
What does this store have in his...
Okay.
Who is
so you're
solving
talking about true third party because you're saying everyone else has assumed the proprietary dark store inventory model, but nobody is doing third party.
Third party inventory. Inventory is easier said than done when you add FIFO, when you add perishability into it. When I add perishability, inventory is an extremely complicated problem to solve. Inventory, in math terms, we call this a knapsack problem. Robber goes into this one and tries to steal, right? He has a standard knapsack problem.
Knapsack problem.
Yeah.
Right?
What do you first put into it and how much
the basket? White store inventory or bright store inventory, as we call it, is a standard knapsack problem. Each store has a knapsack problem, and then you add all of this into a traveling salesman problem, and you have a hyper-local, serious inventory problem. If the future of Indian e-commerce, at least the brown boxes e-commerce, physical goods, is to solve this knapsack, is to solve this traveling salesman problem. What Zeptos and the Instamarts and Dunzos and Porters have done is to solve the salesman problem.
On to episode 2. Why has all the excitement and disruption gone out of startups?
People are betting against Spain to win Euro because they are the biggest favorites.
Correct.
And some of them probably will make money if Spain
Because the
wins.
betting market exists.
Betting market exists, right? So that is a bet. But so that's very interesting thought. But my whole thing was that, I see VCs coming and advising people to build companies. I said, that's not right, because VCs are never there to build companies. VCs are there to make exit, right?
And to be fair, which is perfectly
Which is
fine.
their religion.
Yeah.
This is what you're supposed to do, right? So unless and until you are somebody who can balance both of these things, take money from the VC, but don't take him advice from him if you want to build a company. However, if your objective is also to cash out and make money, then VC is a great guy for you. Because what would the VC do? He or she, the moment you have a 3-year horizon or 5-year horizon, you are doing a whole bunch of stuff to dress up the company and to sell it to the highest bidder.
Correct.
Right? Now, if you do the same thing to the person who is building the organization, I think that just doesn't work. Right? So, this I have heard from one of the person whom I really admire, Dr. Harish Hande, and he says, please choose your VCs carefully. Right? Please choose your investors carefully. There are some who really have this long-term view. They are the ones who will be builder of organization. Take money from them, advice from them, that is fine. But today I really get worried because most of the VCs whom I meet do not have this orientation. And they do not have a clue, how to run a big organization. If I ask them fundamentals about organizations, they look at me and say, why are you asking me all this stuff? This is like fairly theoretical stuff. We are here to play this game, right? I said, sure, man.
Don't take your advice from who you take your money from.
Absolutely, right?
Episode 3. Is Zepto a gold medalist or a bronze medalist?
Let's talk about India specifically. Much higher population densities than what you would find in the USA, for example, or in Europe. The time, therefore, to deliver from a so-called dark store or warehouse, whatever you call it, could be actually 5 minutes, 7 minutes, compared to USA, where it could be 20 minutes just being on the road. Number one. There. B, the labor cost in this case. Physical delivery is still being done by human beings on a motorcycle or a car or whatever else, of which, beside the hardware cost of the moving or rolling stock, so to say, your labor is the second highest cost. You cannot do more than 10, 12, 15 deliveries, realistically speaking, from the time you pick, you deliver, you go back to the base station and do that. The cost of that delivery, the labor in India is significantly lower than any other market in the world. There. You also have no shortage of people to scale up in any of these cities where it can then say that the cost will rise. You need 20,000 people on the roads today, there'll be 40,000 who will be ready to serve you. There. Along with that, very good development as far as GPS, local GPS and tagging is concerned, very precise location. Now, these are various ecosystems which have all converged to make this a market which is no like any other market in the world. So I would not look into why it does not work elsewhere. It wouldn't have worked elsewhere because of different cost structures and different infrastructural structures, let's say. India is very different there. I think what changed for me, if I were to speak for myself, and probably that might be true, I think Zepto guys continue to add categories. Beyond just the, let's say, the snack foods and a little bit of basic topping up. I don't consume cigarettes. Some people consume, at my age, I don't consume too many condoms either. But people talked about, they need in 10 minutes when there's an urgent requirement for some products like this. Zepto did not stop there. I think they added basic groceries. They added even household hard goods. And now, of course, consumer electronics and electricals.
Episode 4. Delhi pricked the Bengaluru bubble.
There is a lot of people in Bangalore startups who are in leadership or just the layer below leadership who have big tech backgrounds. Okay.
By that you mean what? Amazon, Microsoft, that sort of thing?
Because such companies don't exist in Delhi, right? And over the last 20 years, a lot of, Bangalore is a verb on the dictionary. Like, if you look at the history in that sense, these global development centers, whatever, outsourcing in fancy names. Okay. What that means is like a lot of big offices with like 5,000, 10,000 people of a lot of large US companies exist in Bangalore. They've come up in the last 20 years. When you're starting to sort of scale, and go from a 10-member engineering team to a 100-member, okay, now I need an adult in the room who will kind of do, like, set up an engineering team the proper way. Just go and hire somebody from Amazon. Nobody's fired for hiring VP of engineering from Amazon. That's like, just look around Bangalore. Every startup has a VP of engineering from Amazon. Somebody will bring in structure and all of that. I mean, that's the stereotype, but there's a lot of leadership which is ex-big tech, right? There's also culture imbibed as a result of that, which is like, they're not the kind of people who are going to be the first to say, hey, bring your ass to office tomorrow.
Episode 5. Swiggy needs to reclaim its past glory.
I think that narrative is being built right now, or has been built around food delivery. Not food delivery, quick commerce. And that quick commerce is the next big thing, blah, 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 blah. And therefore, there is a valuation that has been placed. You might think, so that's 200,000+ crores for this company. That's a lot of money. That would be nearly. And Dmart is one of the largest chains, and they have an extremely efficient set of operations, very high EBITDA margins compared to the rest of the industry. Zomato is nowhere close, not even in the vicinity of having an EBITDA margin. And I say this with all honesty, while they say adjusted EBITDA, once you remove the word adjusted, it is not EBITDA. So it is, the A in the EBITDA is adjusted. So, but, the problem with this is that in the end, when you come to a public market, you're going to have to drive eventually on the back of these narrative. If the narrative is strong, you're going to get valuations. Swiggy's IPO, I think, comes on the back of the valuation that.
What's the Zomato narrative which is driving these?
Quick commerce. Blinkit's
So it's
gonna,
Blinkit.
Yeah, it's Blinkit's going to, and that's, by the way, some of the reasons why I didn't like the stock is because I thought Blinkit is a terrible operation from a
When they
long-term
acquired it
EBITDA.
before
When
the
they,
IPO.
just
It was
about
Grofers
at
era.
that time.
No, it was
And
just
then
after the IPO.
Just after the IPO. They paid 3,500 crores for it. They already paid 1,000. They did a
But
bunch of-
arguably then, with the benefit of hindsight, one of the best acquisitions.
as of today, because you're getting the narrative, it's okay. I'm a market guy. I accept any narrative.
Episode 6. Is the golden era of the software engineer over? My point was that another alternative, should you perhaps change the way engineering education is done so that those 1.5 million or more who come out are better in some ways? My point is, there is this 4-year period where people pass out of school and enter an engineering college, and they study engineering for 4 years and they come out as engineers. And I'm guessing that most of them are looking forward to a job as an engineer and a career as an engineer. And is that sustainable? And how can we make that more reliable?
Yeah, for me, I have opinions on quality engineering. I have opinions on what can be done to bring out a lot more quality engineers. The specific point about the disconnect between the sheer number of engineers that we are producing versus what the market can absorb brings into picture a whole bunch of other factors that I don't have as strong opinions on. So,
all right, let's go into the engineering education aspect of it.
Yeah, so
on
let's
which
start
you
with
do
that.
have
Right?
an opinion.
I think let me enumerate 2 issues. Okay, just to sort of bootstrap this conversation a little. One is the continuum from school to college. College doesn't happen in in complete isolation of the schooling background, right? Our schools teach kids something and teach kids certain behaviors that maybe are not as relevant for college. Let's take predictability, as an example. In school, the goal is not to get educated. It's the goal is to get into the next class, because so long as you have cleared the exam, your objective is essentially met and you move into the next class, right? There is predictability. College time acts as that buffer between the real world and your schooling system, and it's useful for us to apply that lens when evaluating what colleges actually do to the people today. And it also helps determine the behavior of students often enough in colleges. When kids enter college, the approach to education, particularly in engineering, needs to fundamentally go through a change, because it's a very it's not just a theoretical subject. You are actually expected to be building something. Okay, and that's the core essence of engineering, and that's what differentiates them from scientists, pure scientists. You've got to be building something. That idea of learning something to be applying in the real world is so disconnected from the schooling background that most kids actually go through. It's miraculous that the people actually still survive the engineering curriculum. Okay. In order to make that journey easy enough for the students, colleges often end up dumbing down or changing their curriculum, the method of teaching, all of these things to better suit for that continuum, that jump from the schooling to college, than preparing the kids for college to real life.
Episode 7, Google Pay. Big, successful, vulnerable. My point is that Google Pay is not a business. It does not operate in the same way, for instance, a Phonepay does.
Can you
or
explain
a Paytm
that
does,
a little
right?
bit more?
Who's the founder of, who's the CEO of Google Pay? What is Google Pay's objective in India? Does it want to win market share? Who said that? Have you seen someone come and say that this is our product lineup? And all the normal things that we take for granted in a business, right? We talk about Zomato, we talk about Paytm, we talk about PhonePay. Who do you associate with? The leadership. What is Google Pay's leadership in India? When did you last see it? What do we know what they want to do, right? What we do know is that Google Pay is a successful product built inside this giant organization called Google, run by Google staffers and executives, right? And their success, though linked to Google Pay, is not linked at the hip. It's not sink or swim. Everyone who works at PhonePay or Paytm knows that if they don't succeed, the company goes under, right? But for Google Pay, if you do a really great job, perhaps you get promoted to a different country. Perhaps you get promoted to a different, it's a very odd, this thing, we don't realize it. And that's why I feel it's almost like, I'm a person who loves metaphors and analogies. I almost see it as like Google Pay is like this giant dolphin swimming in a sea of sharks. It's an anomaly. It's not a business.
I think one thing you said was very interesting, which is that Google Pay is a product, not a business. And incidentally, UPI is also just a product, not a business. Because you can't make money off of UPI.
Episode 8, Private Coaching is Eating Away at Schooling.
You have a screening system. You have a basic screening test for all the kids who want to get into competitive exams. This is just a basic screening test that basic science, basic mathematics, etc. It doesn't require you to do any test prep. If you've done a basic 12th grade in any state board, you should be able to pass this test. It's a pass or fail test. Once you pass this test, you get a lottery. You get a lottery number. And your IIT, your NIT, and your AIMS, all these places are awarded to you purely on the basis of random lottery. Okay? You could even have reservations on this. 30% of the seats goes to this category, 40% goes to this. So social justice is maintained. But to everybody else, it's just random. Now, if you're IIT, right, currently you're basking under the fact that the kids who come in are already so smart and worked so hard that you could literally sit in IIT, not teach anything. 4 years later, you'll get really good output, right? But now if it's by lottery, your IITs have to work harder, right? Now you're getting an average, at a large sample, you're getting an average kind of a student. Now you have to take this average student and make this student extraordinary. Now earn your bloody elite status, right? Now you go into AIMS. You do the same thing. Earn your elite status. You have to bring your students to a higher level. Now, what happens to the other kids who didn't get in? Now, a lot of these people will be above average. They'll have above average expectations. They'll go to local colleges.
Once
you
so
go to
you're
the-
inverting it in some senses.
Yeah, and then your pressure is on local colleges to improve your standards, no? Because now better students come to local colleges and your local universities.
So episode 9, why couldn't Stripe become the Stripe of India?
I think things started unfolding very quickly. They came in 2017, and from 2018, it became crunch time for payment aggregators, right?
Why?
Like, this is the part where we come to regulations, right? Where 2018 is when the data localization norms came in, right? That's which said that all companies, global Indian, need to have a copy of data in India. Companies struggled with that. Though the big ones like, say, a Facebook or Visa, all of them got to it really quickly and complied within the 6 months time that RBI gave.
RBI gave 6 months.
RBI gave 6 months.
Okay.
I'm not recalling if they gave any extensions, but originally it was 6 months, if I remember that well. And Stripe took 18 months to do the data localization bit, right? That again goes back to the being based out of the US and their priorities as part of being, having a global roadmap and all of that.
Yeah,
But
I'm sure Vikram will have a lot to say about what it's like to work in companies with global roadmap versus local roadmaps. Okay.
correct. So companies really struggle, like MasterCard, which has a lot to lose, right? Even they could not comply within that deadline. And RBI, of course, did not allow them, to conduct operations. And therefore, Stripe, even though, like, one thing that we haven't discussed is that Stripe did not offer UPI. Like, in a country which is UPI dominant, even back in, I think, 21, I think UPI was 60% of all payments. It didn't have it. And that was because until it did localization, it could not launch UPI. NPCI came down with a diktat. NPCI, the body which governs UPI, came down with a diktat that you cannot launch UPI till your data localization complied. So there was data localization in 2018. Then came so many guidelines after that, right? So I don't think Stripe ever even got to take...
I think we were starting by saying that, the timing of it is like very interesting, etc. But I feel like another interpretation is that the timing of it could not have been worse because they just come into India. They start off with an invite-only program. They are really gung-ho. They're about to do it. And suddenly they realize, we are actually a card company. And now there's this thing called UPI that everybody is now using. And so I guess we have to get to UPI. So before we get to UPI, they get to UPI and they say, no, now you have to do data localization first. And to do data localization, they have to go back and ask, global roadmap teams, etc. to do it. So Stripe India, and this is from Arundhati's story from back then, they privately had told in the story that they could have done this data localization in 6 months if they had a local team. So they could have done it within this time. But because it went to all this global stuff, there was no way that they could do it.
Episode 10, Health Insurance in India is ripe for disruption.
I've been running hospitals for close to 2 decades now and got to participate in a lot of the tomfoolery that exists in how insurers work with hospitals and doctors in admitting, denying, submitting claims. And it is always the most frustrating experience for any hospital and for any consumer, no doubt, when we do all the work and get the patient to a point where they come nearly at death's door, put an incredible amount of effort, save their lives, do the surgery, treat them, put all the medicines, get them off ICU care, get them off the ventilator, have them ready to walk home, and we've done everything to achieve that sort of patient satisfaction. And all of that goes away in that last couple of hours when the bill is submitted to the insurer. Insurance says deny this, deny that, this gap, and so on. And then the patient starts yelling at us because we are there. We are the ones who are present. And that led us to a journey to try and work backwards and see what is going on that is so wrong. And so then we started working with the insurance companies and saying, see, boss, is it a data transparency issue? I can give you daily totals. I can, figure out, sit with you and tell me how on a daily basis I'll submit all the bills. So you can tell me beforehand so that you don't provide these nasty surprises on the last day, the last minute of the last day that the patient is in our hospital. We try to work with other insurance companies to say, look, let's co-create some products. Let's do something that is limited in scope, narrow network, something patients understand, which doesn't have a lot of the terms and conditions. If you say that you're covered for everything. It doesn't matter. We as the hospital will bear some risk, but you pay us upfront and we'll take care of all of that. That was a little bit of the precursor to what we eventually evolved into. no interest for that either. Tried working with TPAs as well. Again, it's just that the industry was built in a very different time and place where a lot of these legacy practices just got baked in to the overall structure. And so we said, look, let's just build it from the ground up.
Episode 11, Netflix's last growth market.
There are many waves that Netflix missed, right? Can you just walk us through the waves of content that came through in India over the last few years and what all it missed? And I think we've sort of hinted around it. You said there was a bit of horror, there is some crime. So can you just talk us a bit about it?
When the TV industry was running in India, it was kitchen dramas in the front and then unscripted shows like KBC and Big Boss at the back end in the evenings. Okay, that was the general entertainment channels makeup.
Okay.
When it came to OTT, first wave was can we give them something fresh, which is not happening on TV, and hence create differentiation and the addition of the subscription of the OTT platform, even though there is TV at home. That's when they did a lot of fresh stuff, but it all had very small niches that it appealed to.
Can you give examples?
There will be examples like, some of the early shows, I don't recall.
So you could say
some
like
of
a
them.
Sacred Games. Is it
Sacred Games? Yeah, Sacred Games was again, they married crime with something that is going to work for elite with a lot of exoticism and also the intention of exporting it. So it's like when you're trying to meet too many objectives, none of them you achieve
You
to
want
the
to create
hilt.
a global property, but also I want it to be successful in India.
Working in India. So that's when and that's the problem in India, that when you try to make export quality stuff, it's very different from what works in India. Because, and then when you, then it went on that journey where it only made export qualities. There is a character called Ashwatthama in Mahabharat, who has been milked like crazy by this country. Asur, which was a breakout hit for Viacom, for Woot. Kalki, which has recently released. Hidden Hindu, which is a big publishing hit. All of it originates from an Ashwatthama and builds a sci-fi or a fantasy or a horror story on top of it.
Got it.
So there is a lot of this stuff that needs to happen in India and needs to be driven by companies that are leaders or want to become leaders in this country.
Episode 12, Ather Energy was a pioneer. Can it also be a leader?
People tried ordering scooters online and neither the customers like it nor the OEMs like it. So it's not really happened much. You used a word, Praveen, brand power. And I think that's a much better word than just saying brand. When you just say brand, it just means there is a promise this company stands for, right? But brand power is that promise known at scale.
Okay.
Right?
Fair.
You can have a lot of brand in Indranagar, right? But there are like some 1,000 customers in Indranagar. Kitna hi bech lunga, theek hai? You don't have really brand power. Okay, like at a national scale, you don't really have brand power. You have brand power in Indranagar, which like, theek hai, if this is your literal addressable market, you've got a brand either ways. Okay.
Sure.
Okay. Some companies may not even have a brand. Some companies may have a constantly shifting goalpost. Today I stand for quality. Tomorrow I stand for performance. Tomorrow I stand for endurance. Uske baad I stand for community. Kuch bhi. It's a floating thing. What I was saying is, you've got to use whatever you are betting on, whether it's technology, it's product, it's cost, quality, whatever it is. You got to eventually look at all of that strength in being repurposed into becoming a consistent promise that is known across the country, right? Because if वो land हो गया, then you don't even need to market tomorrow. Okay, eventually. Okay, now, so what are you going to do for that? Like one thing we do is, and a lot of people talk about our marketing, but the reality is we actually spend one of the highest in marketing in the e-2wheeler industry. Let's look at our numbers there in the DIHP and look at, let's say, Ola's numbers, right? So we do spend, right? We actually spend a fair bit on marketing. I believe very strongly it's very important. And we might have made this mistake in the very early years, thinking the classical thing that product founders do, right? Product bana liya, to everybody will beat a path through your showroom, even if you don't have one.
Yeah.
No, they can't, right? So you've got to first tell them about this beautiful thing that you have. And what you've got to learn is different ways of telling that story. And as the world keeps evolving with social media, everything, the medium keeps changing. Once upon a time, it was TV ads and newspaper, then billboards, now social media, now influencers, now other just ways of keeping in the news, whatever, right? But you've got to spend time and effort in marketing.
no running away from it. Absolutely. If you don't do that, you're signing up for best case scenario an incredibly slow transition. Okay.
Fair.
Second point, just to cover that, distribution. I think distribution is a bit of a solved piece in India because of the great work done by the other automotive companies in India. But I think distribution is a function of...
What does that mean? I mean,
just
as a layperson, how are you saying that as
It's
a new
not black
startup
magic.
in the electronic, in the electric two-wheeler market, how can you say that ICE two-wheeler makers over decades have solved this puzzle, so therefore it's a solved puzzle? What does
So,
that really mean?
I would
Do you
imagine
not
that-
need to solve it yourself?
Yes, but you need to work on it. I'm not saying you don't need to work on it, right? You've got to put money on it also. What I'm saying is it's no longer black magic. It's not this secretive thing about how do you get dealers.
So it's just a
right?
capital
Yeah.
and execution thing.
Yes, it's not like, only if you knew the right people, only if you are in certain access, only then you will get the distribution. No, the thing is whether the management required execution bandwidth required to open dealerships or manage them, or just the sheer number of dealers available in the country that you can tap on and who want to jump on electric today. You got a great situation right now. But distribution is, in my opinion, a function of your product's sellability. See, if you're selling, like with the first generation scooter that we had, Ather 450, priced at 1.6 lakh rupees, even if I open up 1,000 dealerships, the reality is can't sell. Like, sellability nahi hai. And even if you say, listen, just invest in it and open the dealership, a dealership selling 3 scooters a month, even the manpower will be disappointed, right? So, and case in point, we've got 12 dealerships in Bangalore. We've got 3 in Ahmedabad, right? Ahmedabad's a great scooter market. Why does Ather not have a dozen in Ahmedabad also, right? That's because I know that the first generation product has a limited market in Ahmedabad. If I over dealerize that space, I'll just burn money for everybody and lose motivation. So we open up a certain number of dealerships. But now as we add incrementally new products, like we added a family scooter, I believe that opens up a lot more addressable market. So you go deeper in distribution. But distribution is really a function of how sellable your product is, how buyable your product is, that's affordability and likability.
Episode 13, do we even need product managers?
There is hard bureaucrat behavior, pure artist behavior, unencumbered by reality. And somewhere the truth is in the middle, right? You get the scientists to be a bit more fun-loving, right? Like you invent metrics that are completely impossible to measure, right? Like smiles per now or whatever shit you can think of. Like maybe just coming on data, right? Just from a vantage point, I think organizations are drowning in data, but struggling with the reality that they are not any more wiser. They don't know the intuition of what is happening, right? And there are, like Shreya said, right, there are so many layers. There is a time delay aspect. You do something, you measure for one day, it's an excess. Some person will disbelieve. They say, no, let's look at the effect for 1 month. They say, okay, it's still a success. And then you've kind of, maybe the ecosystem has changed, the product proposition has changed, strategy changed, operations went for a toss for 1 month, metrics go down. And by that time, it's been sold. In the food chain, it's been sold as a success. People have moved on to a new shiny toy. They've gotten their PM2 to SPM. Director has gotten his director to senior director. Everyone's moved on. You tick all the boxes, right? You tick the boxes of conformist product management and product development. So as we looked at data was good, numbers were good. No one bailed on us. Everyone goes home happy. And at the end of 6 months, you're still scratching your head. Said, I can't put my pulse on what happened, but we didn't make progress. And that is eating a lot of people, right? Like product leadership, engineering leadership. I mean, everyone's smart, competent individuals, right? Deep down after 2 drinks, most people speak the truth and they suffer with this. We did everything right, but I don't get a comfort or a sense that we did the right thing or we are better off than where we were 6 months ago. Be it engineering, be it design, be it manufacturing. With more data comes the curse that you feel good that you're doing the right thing. It also comes with the curse that you're not any wiser.
Episode 14, how will Ola and Uber avoid death by 1,000 cuts?
Unlike a normal business, or especially the tech business, cab business is very paradoxical because generally you scale And as you scale, your overheads are taken care and you start generating, getting break even and get profitable. Here I have seen the profitability is largely with the smaller players. You can remain profitable till you are certain size because you can micromanage every small, part of that game. But the moment you become big, I think the profits are more difficult. You see that, generally these cab companies or like these aggregators are not owning cabs. They don't have repair and maintenance cost or such overheads. It's completely asset light model, to the large extent. Still, they've been posting last few years. You see that there is no cash burn. Still, they are posting 1,000, 2,000 crore kind of losses. So the overheads are killing the business in a way, because ultimately the whole objective of any business is to generate profit. If you have not posted a single rupee of profit for 14 years, then that who's disrupting? Why is it getting disrupted? Why do more players want to get into that industry? So in India, unfortunately, the mobility business is not profitable till date. Nobody's cracked it. 10 years back, this was a hypothesis that winner takes all. You kill all the competition. You become monopoly or duopoly.
Correct.
And then you command your premium. That does not happen today. With good certainty, we can say that has not happened.
Episode 15, the relentless rise of the government as a competitor.
Traditionally speaking, there's usually one of two things, and I've written about this, which is that wherever there is some kind of distortion like this in the market, either what happens is you have I don't know if it's classical, but you have the approach that's followed in Western countries and United States and all of those other places where there is regulation that comes in on antitrust, on anti-monopoly,
Correct.
which is what all of these companies are going through right now. Or there is the EU kind of a methodology, which is somewhat similar, except they come in with much more, power and, break it up. Then on the other extreme is the whole China thing, where you can't do anything unless the China government wants you to do it. And they have perfectly just taking down, wiping out sector after sector. We've spoken about education in the past. We spoke about how China basically one day woke up and decided that we don't want private coaching startups and companies to exist. And they just wiped them out of the face of the earth.
Alibaba
Or to Alibaba, etc. Right? So this particular thing in the middle, which sort of is being sold, and just like you, I have sat in meetings where representatives from India Stack and iSpirit have come in and spoken about this, and their pitch is that this is a very unique third way of doing things, and it's going to be a model for the world to follow, where on one hand, we are not doing this carrot, we are not doing this stick. It is something where we are coming in as a player, becoming a competitor.
Episode 16, what does Ola Electric's future hold?
It depends from category to category, industry to industry. But whether it is tech or even if it is not tech, I think a first mover advantage is definitely something it's great to have in your pocket. However, building a business over the long term requires you to do two things. One is you need to acquire customers. So a first mover advantage certainly helps in acquisition of customers, because at any given point in time, there are always early adopters, people, especially in tech, there'll be people who will be at the cutting edge of adoption of something new, etc., etc. But I think equally, you also need to show capability to retain those acquired customers, as well as to signal to the market that you have that power to keep things going. If there's a problem with a customer, you sort it out really quickly, etc. Especially so, you talk a lot about tech-based, if it's an app, really, people, there's not much at stake. But, if you're buying what I call an asset, these are all asset categories: two-wheelers, four-wheelers, air conditioners. And asset categories means that people have parted with a substantial sum of money, right? It's a big thing for them. Now, in these cases, I think it's not enough to just be damn good at acquisition. I think it is your long-term survival depends, and doing well depends on your ability to, maintain those relationships, sustain them, service them. And I think therefore it's actually two aspects. There is acquisition and retention.
Episode 17, can venture capitalists do no wrong?
So the market view.
See, India's GDP is very different from the US or China, first of all. I think all of us have to agree. And as much as obviously a lot of us across founders, VCs all try to increase it, it increases a particular pace, which has a lot of other factors. One. Two, the industry in India, which is the VC industry, is 15 years old, like Mana was talking about. In the US, it's 50, 60 years old, right? You can understand that when an industry is in different maturities across two different markets, which have very different GDPs, you have to account for certain learnings, which are different. Third, if you see historically, the lifespan of companies has been reducing drastically, right? What used to be 50, 60 years in the middle of last decade, in the middle of last century, is now becoming 15, 20, years, which is much lesser. If you just, simplistically overlay these three concepts, you have to understand that, and this is where the cyclical point also, if you overlay, I think as an industry which is so nascent in a market whose GDP is so much lesser, you will have to allow for all the learnings to happen on all the mistakes. Otherwise, you're putting undue pressure on something which is just not right in terms of even plain commonsensical comparison, right? Because you're asking for maturity of a US. Even US, as Manav said, has an FTX mistake now. Why should an FTX mistake happen when an Enron has happened? It happens, right? Because it's a new mistake. As long as we make new mistakes, and this is what we tell founders, that is fine. We shouldn't make the same mistakes.
Episode 18, Dmart versus the challengers at the gate.
Yeah, so let me just deep dive here, because this is a very prime topic at most of the legacy retailers. I call Dmart as a legacy retailer because all of us have built brick and mortar. And after we built brick and mortar, the online wonder came in. And most of the legacy retailers have always believed, and even now it is proved, that online retail is not profitable at all because of the returns, because of the lower ticket sizes, multiple issues. And even today, there is a retailer or a brand in the world called Primark, which is one of the biggest fashion value brand in the world, which does not do online at all. It is available online only to book a slot in the store. That's it. And that too happened post-COVID. During COVID also it was not operational. So they have proven that without online you can really do business. Zudio has proved it in India. They are not online at all. They don't do online stocking. They don't do online delivery, nothing at all. So the problem is the legacy retailer clearly understand that, look, the valuation that a non-legacy retailer is getting. Now, look at what Amazon versus Walmart is. Walmart still continues to be the biggest retailer in the world, still growing, but its valuation is what? 1/5 of Amazon? Amazon is what? 2 trillion now, and Walmart is still 500 billion, 600 billion, maybe 800 billion. That's it. It is not valued. So the problem is we sometimes believe that, look, we are not into the valuation game, we are into the customer game. And then we try and tell ourselves that, look, let's do the better service. And that's where the legacy retailer is getting, I would say, sort of behind in this whole journey of adopting online and really driving it hard. That's part one. And obviously, it's a very risky game at all, because when you are looking at online and burning a lot of money, it's a big risk. So do you want to destroy what you are earning right now, or you are looking at, defending? And that's what Dmart Ready is. Dmart is trying to only defend their existing customers by adding additional delivery process there. That's it. That's what it is.
Episode 19, Marketing is eating itself from the inside.
I think marketing in the last 15 years has gone through a huge metamorphosis. Okay. So what Rohin was referring to, which is that, marketing being growth hacking, marketing being assisting sales, marketing doing performance marketing doing lead generation. So there is this emergence of, chief business officers, chief growth officers, chief digital officers. What they're doing is a lot of the work that they do is the discipline of marketing, but it demonstrates itself differently inside organizations. The KPIs are sales. The KPIs are cost per lead, cost per sale, and things like those. Now, there are two ways of looking at that metamorphosis. somebody like me was extremely happy about it because it actually gave me a seat on the table. Because, when I grew a business, and this is real number I'm talking about, from contributing 7% to the company top line, and I grew it to 15%, I had a seat on the table. I could actually ask, what changes are you making to the product and pricing? Before that, as a marketer, I could only recommend, I could only suggest, I could only, implore, right? So I think that was an opportunity that happened for in this metamorphosis. The second thing that changed was the ecosystem changed. You earlier had, let's say, a marketer had one market research agency and one communications agency. From when I started work, it disintegrated somewhere in the year 2000 into media agency, creative agency, PR agency, right? And it disintegrated again, in about 2010 into a digital media agency, digital creative agency, ATL creative agency, PR agency, and a digital PR agency, and whatnot. Okay? And you needed a Sutradhar. Ideally, the
Correct.
CMO should have been a Sutradhar. But what Rohan is proposing is right. What has happened is, because this impacts the business so closely, the founder has become that Sutradhar.
Correct.
Episode 20, The Mystery of Usury. So, my question is, what's the risk between the bank and the NBFC? If the bank gives to the NBFC at 16%, is there a risk? Can the NBFC pass on some of the delinquencies back to the bank saying, my customers didn't pay me, so therefore I'm not paying you?
In the practical world, one of the negotiations that happens between the NBFC and the bank you buy is what minimum guarantee do you offer? Like the NBFC, and hence, if it's a zero minimum guarantee, there can be a pass-through, and you can actually, technically, they can still hold.
By minimum guarantee, what does it mean?
NBFC borrows 10 rupees from the bank. It minimum guarantees the bank back 6, for sure. Or if the charged interest rate is 16%, let's say that's then 11.6 that they have to pay. It minimum says, I will at least pay you 9. So that much is secured for the bank. And the remaining, the NBFC could go insolvent in the next 2 months, at which point then, the bank cannot, there is no asset to pick up. I want to add, in your first point itself, Atish, I just wanted to add 2 aspects to this. I think number one is what we also underestimate is, or not underestimate, building on what I had said before, the banks today, your 4.5%, I don't know what was released the prior years, but my assumption is that the actual net borrowing rate for a bank or its cost of capital has been going up year on year because the amount of current account surplus has been going down. People are putting money into other sources. People are saving less. So as a total, and hence they're also borrowing from open capital markets more, my sense is it's going up. So there's a little pressure on the banks. That's one of the... Second piece I wanted to say is, while for the NBFC, they're getting the money from the bank at the 16 to 20% that you said, additionally, there's another operating cost of going and finding customers and doing that higher for an NBFC because the kind of customer they're reaching is sitting somewhere else.
We'll get to that because I think we were also trying to build that layer one by one, right? Like, first layer being banks lend to. And my question was, what's the risk that the banks bear and how do they justify charging 4x their cost of funds?
So to be honest, there's no justification, right? But as Mithun said, there are certain minimum guarantees that are negotiated. After that, it's jam. And I hate to use the word jam, but it's up to you, right?
By jam, you mean literal jam.
Charge and at what rate these people...
Right? It's not an acronym.
I mean literal jam.
It's not Jan Aadhaar or anything like that, right? Because there's a lot of acronyms.
No. I mean literally, right? No, nothing like that, right? So I literally mean jam, right? Because it can be a pure profit play, right? And if you think about it, I am essentially subleasing an activity to another entity because I am unable, and in some instances, I don't want to take on the hassle of going to tier 3 towns, villages, etc., right? Because their overheads, there's marketing and origination fees, etc. I've given it to these people. They seem to be more efficient. I'm going to charge them a rate. I have a minimum guarantee. And then as long as Mithun said, as long as they don't go insolvent, I earn a very, very handsome profit from the entire operation.
Episode 21, AI Annihilates Indian SaaS Companies.
The risk that AI brings, specifically to bring it back to this point, is that AI is far more efficient in lowering the costs, improving the quality of all of those things than a human would for many of these things, right? And that is the existential threat that a lot of Indian SaaS companies face, right? So companies that were doing some workflow kind of solutions, maybe some automation kind of things. These are all things where we could build these solutions out much cheaper and much more efficiently than our Western counterparts. But now AI comes in and it's this big tidal wave that completely washes away all of these arbitrage opportunities, right? And that is the existential threat that I see for Indian SaaS companies.
In fact, for our listeners, Sumant has written a fascinating piece for SaaS Boomi where he writes about this threat that AI is going to do for SaaS companies, specifically for Indian SaaS companies. So we'll go into that. Sidhu, do you have a point of view on what AI does for Indian SaaS companies?
Look, the juice is there to squeeze.
Okay, go on.
Anyone can squeeze it if you have the mind for it. It's not easy. It is very far from being commoditized. The underlying argument over here is there is productivity, latent productivity to be tapped.
Okay.
One shape or form, all of this translates into massively increased productivity. And that's how all of these consequences play out.
Sure.
For a developer.
For whoever is in the ecosystem with AI support through some combination of tools, agents, models, blah, 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 there is going to be such an enormous increase. This is a core of the argument.
Fair.
I believe the productivity is real. I believe it is there to be squeezed. I believe that in today's state of art of technology, for any particular use case and context, there is a almost unique solution that has to be devised. We are very far from generalizing and commoditizing. There is no magic wand of AI where you're going to wave it like this and say, here's an AI tool for an entire segment and it will work for everyone. We are at this point of time, years away from that. At the same time, like my ex-co-founder at ActiveMobs, who's now the CEO of BlogWorld, has been aggressively adopting AI workflows in their product execution from almost day zero. Probably has some of the most advanced thinking on the topic that I run into. And, the kind of improvements in productivity and efficiency he's claimed. My point being, there is massive juice to squeeze already out of just plain ChatGPT subscriptions. If you have the mind to re-engineer how you work, because there's no other way to do it, it is a breaking change. You and your team have to learn entirely new workflows and figure it out from first principles. There's no one to advise you. And you have to start with Playground, ChatGPT Playground, Anthropic Playground. And then from there on, as you understand how it plays with your workflow, start building small tools around it. This evolution is available for anyone to tap if they have a mind to.
And finally, episode 22, the death of D2C. Sorry, Ajay, before you go on, you said for the first 3 years you were largely or primarily direct to consumer, or
90% direct to consumer.
Got it. And could you give us a sense of where that split is? I'm not asking for a very exact number, but generally how is that?
Sub 10%. No, sub 10%, but that's a natural evolution of the
You're saying the
consumer
pie
journey.
is growing, and as the pie grows, it grows much faster.
I believe what Ajay, I'll let Ajay speak, but I believe what Ajay is suggesting is that as the brand gets bigger, your customers start to want to discover you and buy you from their own preferred channels.
Because you have to understand the consumer, right? A consumer goes with intent to a marketplace to shop a particular category.
Correct.
He does not go with intent to sleepyowl.co searching, because if we want him to come with intent, we have to pay a lot of ad dollars to get him there. So once we've done our early days of learning and built a right product that we feel for this particular TG works, then we need to be at a marketplace where discovery is much easier and the user is coming with intent. And that's what we've discovered as well.
Let me interject, right? I think we've done a lot of work on this space and thinking about it. And it really is category specific and purchase specific. So if you are in a coffee category, which is a frequent purchase, and coffee tends to be purchased as part of a weekly, monthly shopping for your groceries. And someone who does it wants to buy in that basket coffee, milk, sugar, pepper, masala, rice, noodles. It's a very different thing than when I want to buy a bed. Because I want to buy a bed. I don't need assortment and I don't have a basket. So in that extreme example where I buy a product once every 10 years with high intent, I'm willing to spend time to go to whichever direct mattress company or not that I want. If I'm going to buy coffee every week and I know it's part of a basket of 30 products, imagine me going to Sleepy Owl to buy coffee, going to Epigamia to buy yogurt, going to VBAR to buy. I'll go to 30 websites, put in 30 OTPs, 30 pins. There is no consumer who will do that and add friction to his or her life. So as we at DSGCP do a lot of work on consumer buying behavior, we need to understand our job as a brand is to make consumers' life very easy. If that consumer has a particular sort of preference on how they purchase, buy a particular product, and keep in mind that same product might be bought differently on different occasions. So for the usual shopping, I'll go once a week, online, offline, up to you. But if it's 2 in the morning and I've got a hunger pang, I want to deliver now, I might look direct. So keep that in mind, because if we look at only coffee, the discussion is going to be very grocery focused, which may not apply across the board.